For this oven mat, I'm going to be using my 6x12 hoop, matching bobbin and thread. I've got my heat proof batting cut to size along with my fabrics. I've got my masking tape, painter's tape, and my curved scissors. Today I'm using my 7x12 hoop because it's the smallest one that I've got that will take the 6x10 file. I've already hooped it with wash away stabiliser, and I've put pins around the edges just to keep it taut, because I find with larger hoops, as you can see, it doesn't hold very well. So this is just to stop my stabiliser from pulling through and loosening. I've also floated a piece of cutaway stabiliser on top, so that when the wash away has been washed out, I've still got something to support all the stitching. I've loaded the first file into my machine, which is for the actual mitt part of the oven mitt, and it's the one that looks like two half moons. So I'm going to load this into my machine now and stitch round number 1, which is going to give me my batting and fabric placement lines. So that's the first half of the mitt placement line stitched. The top of my hoop is to the left, just so that you know which way round I am. I'm now going to place my install bright over the top of this outline here, and I'm going to tape it down so that it doesn't move during stitching. And now I'm going to pop that back in my machine and stitch round number 2, and that's going to secure it to the hoop. Next I'm going to trim up all the batting. I'm going to trim up my cutaway stabiliser from around the edge as well. So I'm just going to trim this back a little bit. I'm leaving the bottom half ready for the next half of the mitt. Next we're going to add our first fabric, and you want to cover this area here. Not worried about the top line there, but certainly you need to cover the lower one of the two. So I'm going to place it there and secure it in place with some tape. Let's just trim this back a little bit. Okay, I'm now going to pop that into my machine and stitch round number 3, and that's going to secure the fabric. Next is round number 4, and that's going to stipple all the front of the pocket. And so you want to change your thread over now to the colour that you want the stitching to be. Next we're going to add our backing fabric, and for this you're going to place it face down so that when it's flipped back and round, the top shows. And once again, it's this line here that you need to make sure that you cover. So I'm going to take that down. Pop that back in my machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. So now that that's stitched, I'm going to remove the tape and I'm going to flip this back up here out of the way, Just roll that there and tape it in place so that it can't get in the way when we come to do the next one. And next I'm going to trim up around here. Okay, I'm going to pop my cutaway stabilizer back in place and just hold it with some tape as before. And now I'm going to pop this back into my machine and I'm going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to give me my placement line for the second half of the mitt. And now we're going to repeat the same steps for this half of the mitt. So I'm going to place my batting over the top and I'm going to tape it in place. And now I'm going to pop that back in my machine and stitch round number 7 to secure it. I'm now going to trim up all the excess batting and cutaway stabilizer. And once again I'm going to add my fabric for the mitt, and I'm going to cover this line here and tape it in place. I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 8 to secure it. Next is round number 9, which is a stippling, so if you want to change your thread, now is the time to do it. So now we're going to add the top the backing fabric. So I'm going to lay that over the top, and once again I need it to cover this line here. And I'm now going to tape it in place. I'll now pop that back in my machine and stitch round number 10. So I'm going to remove the tape and I'm going to trim up the fabric from here. I'll turn this round so that I can see what I'm doing. And I can now free this from the hoop. Okay, so next I'm going to turn these over, this up here, and pull it round to the back, and I'm going to press it in place so that it gives me my neat trimmed edge there. So I've now pressed them and they're all ready for the next stage when we need them. So I'm going to put these aside for a minute. I've loaded the second file into my machine, excuse me, and as before, I've hooped my washaway stabilizer, I've floated my cutaway on top, and I've pinned around the edges so that it can't move. I'm now going to pop this into my machine and stitch round number 1, and that's going to give me my placement outline. I've now got my outline. I've trimmed up just down each side of each of the little markers here so that the cutaway stabilizer isn't jammed when I've put my batting on top when I come to trim it all up. It just makes life a little bit easier. And I'm going to turn my hoop over, and I'm going to mark, or should I say extend, the marks on the back of my hoop. So I've just lined up the marker, and I'm just going to take it out to the edge so that I can see it once I add the mitt pieces, because it's them that we're going to align to these marks. Okay, so now I'm going to add my batting. So I'm going to place that over the top, and I'm going to tape it in place so that it doesn't move during stitching. I'm now going to pop that into my machine and stitch round number 2. Next we're going to trim up the excesses. So I'm going to start with the batting. I have just finished trimming up around the edges off camera, because where it's such a large hoop it's difficult to see what I'm doing. It's now time to attach our fabrics, so I'm going to turn my hoop over towards the back, and I'm going to place my fabric over the outline. I'm having the back that's going to match the trim of the pockets, and I'm now going to tape this in place and turn it over. And now I'm going to place my fabric down on the front, and once again I'm going to tape it in place. I'm now going to pop that into my machine and stitch round number 3 to secure them. Next is round number 4, and that's the quilting. So if you want to change your thread colour, now is the time to do it. I've got a matching bobbin and thread in my machine that I've used throughout here, so I haven't changed anything. I'm now going to stitch round number 4. Next we're going to trim up the excess fabric from both the back and the front. And I'm going to start with the back, as always. Next we're going to add the first mitt. This is the top of my hoop, so I'm going to be working on the top half, and we're going to align the mitt with the 2 lines that we extended earlier, like so, and make sure that the stitching here is more or less in line, and then I'm going to tape it in place. I've got a little bit here just on the tip to hold it. I've raised the foot of my machine a little bit so that it allows for the thickness of the mitt part. And I'm now going to pop this into my machine and stitch round number 5. But before I do, I just want to make sure that these edges here are nice and flat so that the foot can't accidentally get caught underneath. Okay, that's good. So now we're going to do the same with the other side. So there's my lines there. I'm going to align the top to that and just make sure it's nice and central, and I can now tape it in place. I'm now going to pop that back in my machine and stitch round number 6 to secure it. Next I'm going to stitch round number 7, which is going to do another round of stitching right around the edge to stabilise everything and to allow better seating of the zigzagging in the next round. I've removed all the tape and now I'm going to trim up all the excess close to the stitch line all the way around. In actual fact, you need to trim it back to the inner stitch line, not the outer one. I didn't realise that it was unattached. Okay, so there it is, all trimmed up properly. I don't know if you can see this, but I've trimmed it up to the inner line. Okay, I'm now going to pop this back into my machine and stitch round number 8 to do the zigzagging around the edge. Now that the zigzag round's done, it's a good idea to check to make sure that you haven't got anything poking out through the stitching, because if you've got some now, you need to sort it out, otherwise by the time you've put the satin stitch edging on, you're never going to get rid of it. I'm now going to put this back into my machine and stitch round number 9, and that's the decorative satin stitch edging. So next we're going to remove this from the hoop, so I'm going to turn this over and cut it away from the back. I've got some warm water here and a cotton bud, and I'm just going to dip it in and run it around the edge to get rid of the excess washaway stabiliser. And there it is, my finished oven mitt. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new ones as they're published. And thank you very much for joining me.